Okay, good evening. The hour of 5:30 having arrived, I call to order this meeting of the Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee. Meeting's being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. Video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets as you enter the room. Public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room, identify yourself by name and address prior to speaking. Our minute taker is participating remotely this evening. Committee members, make sure your microphones are on. Otherwise, we will be seeing our technical person reminding you. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they'll ask you to speak louder or remind you to turn the mic on. I call to order this meeting of Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee, otherwise known as MSFI, for those who cannot say that title. And I note that we are all present and we have a quorum. So item number one on our agenda is a presentation from our Code and Fire Inspections individual, our Fire Marshal, Rick Wood. Would you come forward, address the committee? And
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask the chief to come up as well.
as you wish.
Join me.
Sure.
So good evening, Richard Wood, Fire Marshal and Building Official. Thank you for having us tonight. It's been about 6 months since I started here with the city, April 8th. So we're kind of on track for a little bit of an update. It's been busy, productive, and very rewarding. So I'm excited to be here. I asked the chief to join me today because one of the main features of my position was this idea of trying to create more of a unified front. And so I thought it was appropriate to ask the chief if he could join us, and he'll maybe add a word or two about how that unified front piece is going so that you folks have that. So Chief, I'll defer to you.
Jason Martin, Fire Chief. I just wanted to come tonight to share my my support of Rick's work, as the collaboration and the city engagement that he's been doing. I can speak just from the Fire Chief. He keeps me well informed. Excuse me. Keeps me well informed of issues that might be coming up, good things. Also, I just wanted to give a shout out to them, meaning him and Lieutenant Mankey, for the work that they did with Fire Prevention Week, with the public engagement with the students, and being involved in the parade. So I just want to say he's doing a good job, and I appreciate his hard work. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So one of the primary reasons for joining the city was the idea of trying to evaluate where we're at, right, from a permitting, inspection, enforcement systems. The goal was really to create a continuously improving customer experience through things like engagement, transparency, efficiency, collaboration, and communication, ultimately leading to a city approach instead of a departmental approach. Tonight, what I'd like to do is give you some update on the team's progress related to that and some high-level kind of things. The first is really focused on the customer-centric culture that we're trying to do and instill in everything we do. I'll give you a few kind of high-level pieces and then some examples. Step one of that is really the idea of we're facilitators, not regulators. And I think that's a difficult transition for folks that tend to be in our line of work. But I want to share some of the things we've been doing, and I'm pretty proud of the team. We've really done a lot in the way of staff training, mentorship, and recognition. So I want to call out a few things. This week, Michael Hagan, our plans reviewer, is at the International Code Council annual business meeting and code action hearings, where they take action on the next series of codes, so he gets to have input in that process. Michael's getting recognized. He was recognized last night, presented with his Master Code Professional credential, a credential that less than, just over, 1,000 people have achieved in about 25 years of it being available worldwide. So it's a very prestigious achievement, and I just wanted to make sure we shout out to Michael. He does a great job for our team. All of the staff attends monthly training, typically with the Building Officials Association. They have a monthly training every month. This past month, we got updated on the plumbing code. I also want to call out Ryan Lawless, our housing inspector, who is finishing up this semester his master's in public health, which is a big achievement by itself. But Ryan recently applied for, and his application was accepted for a national credential as a registered environmental health specialist and registered sanitarian, which is a national credential that Ryan's going to take an exam on. His application's been accepted, so he'll be able to sit for that exam anytime within the next 12 months. So we really look forward to supporting him in that effort. That's what happens when you have too many pieces of paper, I guess. Next month, in November, Ryan, along with Lieutenant Mankey from the Fire Department, are jointly attending a complaints, warrant, and citation training program at the New Hampshire Fire Academy that's put on to go over how do we use the proper legal processes, as well as how do we use the tools that are available. So it's a good program that will allow them to get cutting-edge training to make sure that we keep ourselves on the straight and narrow and follow the proper processes. Megan Mankey, Lieutenant Mankey, and TJ are scheduled. They've applied for the plan review for fire and life safety. They're going to go as a joint team. They're scheduled to go hopefully in January if they get accepted to the National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland. The training itself is free. There is some minor cost. Travel's reimbursed, so that's helpful. So it's a great program. And the good news is they go down as a team and learn each other. That program I have a little bit of understanding of. I was one of the subject matter experts that wrote the last rewrite of the program. And it's about 50% building code and about 50% fire code. So it's a great opportunity for each discipline to see the aspects from the other side. The other thing we've been doing community engagement-wise, I know you're going to hear a report a little bit later on the Ward Optimization Week, but we took an opportunity with that particular initiative to kind of do some outreach. One of the things that I talked about early on was the need for us to have outreach in the community. So what we did was we held a ward meeting in each ward, and some of the folks here in the room attended some of those meetings. I considered it a success for fairly limited advertisement. We didn't really know what we were going to do. We wanted to try it, and 4 out of the 5 wards had at least one person participate in each meeting. Each meeting lasted about an hour and 20 minutes. It went as long as the participants wanted it to. And we just had an open discussion about various items and ways that we can work together as partners. So that was, I considered, very successful. The plan is to do that about every 6 months to try to get some engagement and make sure that we're staying up on what the community is looking for. We've also made presentations to the Kiwanis Rotary and Marciella Realty in the last month and a half or so. Those were all on initiatives around code changes and housing initiatives, including Cottage Court, the new state law that changes some flexibility for redevelopment of up to 4 units to make sure that we're reaching out to let people know what's available. We've also been doing, really focused on this idea of proactive development code approach through engagement. So if somebody has a concept, they've actually been reaching out. We've been providing some early on-site visit as well as some just conceptual conversation around what some of the challenges may be so that people don't spin their wheels on a whole bunch of one direction and miss out on something that could be critical. So trying to circumvent any type of conflicts down the road by getting in early and having a more of a partnership approach. We also recently became a preferred provider for the International Code Council's training program. So we have the ability now to issue, through some of the outreach and training we anticipate doing, issue some continuing education credits for professionals as well as contractors, as well as, frankly, residents if they wanted to come. And we anticipate doing training around code changes, how to interface, how do you get a building permit, what are some of the challenges, and do it based on topics. And we're mapping out an annual schedule, if you will, now to try to make that a reality. The next thing that we did is really simplifying the permitting and inspection, and I promise I'll be a little briefer on that one for you. The biggest piece is we are online now, about 2 months in for the gas and oil permitting. It's going extremely well. We're turning permits around many times in less than 24 hours. We've received a much greater participation rate from the trade, as well as a much more engaged group when we start talking about making sure we're completing the inspection. So we're basically able to conduct an inspection within a day notification. We're typically doing it same day. So if you let us know today that you're doing an installation tomorrow, we're doing everything we can to make sure we're there so that we operate in a fashion that is consistent with what the industry is doing. We don't want to be a burden, and so we're trying to remove as many barriers as possible. So that's one thing we're doing. The next thing along that same line, we looked at how do we adjust our processes. So, you know, the roofing industry, anybody here that's ever had a roof done knows the roofing industry literally shows up at 7 a.m. with the crew. They strip the roof, they patch whatever needs to be patched, they do what they need to do, and they're gone by sundown. And so that puts a little bit of a challenge in how do you manage that from a compliance and inspection process. So we've developed a process that is something that plugs in nicely to that trade so that we're meeting them where they're at instead of them trying to hold them up and have them meet us where we want them to be. We've eliminated duplication between some departmental functions. For instance, we no longer permit for smoke detectors. That's part of the regular building permit. The fire department's not issuing separate permits anymore for that. The building folks are fulfilling that obligation, reducing one more step, if you will, for somebody that's developing. We've also eliminated fire department review and inspection of single-family dwellings, right? The folks in the community development department, the codes are pretty unified in that approach. There's no reason to have multiple inspectors going out to look. We have some very good people. They're credentialed. They know what they're doing. And so from an efficiency perspective, we made a choice that we're not sending multiple inspectors out to look at something like a single-family home. Efficient utilization of personnel, right? We're coordinating more on inspections. Oftentimes our inspections occurring at the same time so that the person asking for the inspection gets the building official as well as the fire officials so that we're doing a joint inspection instead of multiple. That seems to be well received as well. And then proactive service delivery is the next pillar of that particular piece. Voluntary review and comment on design and development concepts, voluntary project design reviews. So we've had people actually come in with a preliminary schematic design, and we've looked at those plans with them to kind of give them some feedback before they get too far down the process. And what that does is ultimately reduces cost for the developing folks and helps them so they don't have to redo drawings and continue to pay A&E services to retool something that we could have had a conversation about early. Regular and frequent presence on projects. We're trying to make sure we don't just wait for an inspection request on larger projects, and we're actually making site visits regularly to give the contractors opportunities. Instead of having to call and wait, we can show up and try to, again, be engaged in the entire process. Those are some of the things we're trying to do on the simplifying of the permitting process. Some few other things is just enhancing review and management of enforcement. So some of the things that we've had for challenges, right, is code enforcement. We've had some community outreach on that. We now hold a weekly case meeting, and it's all the inspectors, including the fire department, sit in a room every Tuesday morning with me, and we review the complex cases to see where we're at, see what progress has been made, strategize on what the next steps are so we're unified. Along that same line, we've improved the transparency and communication with the public, and I believe that. I'd love to hear feedback from the public if they don't feel that way, because we're certainly making that effort. We do have complaints around the online system. Any of you are welcome to look. You can search by address, and you can see the status. One of the things we've changed to increase that transparency is actually writing the activity in a way that is for the actual consumer of the product. We were writing the activity as if it was notes for us, the staff, and not writing that activity with the understanding that the reader who needs to consume that is the person who might have filed the complaint or concerned citizenry. So we've changed the way we view what we put into the system in those fields to make sure that the end user can get information. What are we doing? What's the next steps? Is it closed, open, that kind of stuff. And we're receiving fairly positive feedback. And then we're monitoring monthly, doing an audit of open cases to make sure that, A, if we missed closing something, we don't do that. But if we've missed something, we want to make sure we have a second or third step to make sure we're not letting something fall between the cracks. The IAS, which we reported on last time, the International Accreditation Service for Building Department Recognition Program, we're still in that process. That's a long process. We're going to continue that. Just briefly, all that is benchmarking where we're at in relation to a national body that does accreditation. It's not an accreditation process, but it's more of a benchmarking process, so we're looking at that. Lastly, I just want to kind of give you what to expect in the next quarter. So in the next quarter, some things you should expect seeing us on are some updates legislatively. I know Chapter 18's been out there for a long time. We're going to button that up. That will be kind of a housing and property standards chapter. Instead of housing, property standards, and building, we're separating out building. We'll be coming to you with a Chapter 34, the fire alarm or alarms chapter. There's going to be some changes in there. We're going to present Chapter 42, the Fire Prevention Code, and Chapter 44, which we're going to propose as the new Building Code chapter. Those things you should see coming here in the next probably 6 weeks. And the thought behind that is to try to unify and simplify where we're at so that we don't have competing things. Right now we have a few things that compete with state code, and they're in conflict, and we don't want any of that. So. Other than that, we're going to continue to work on the IAS. Welcome any feedback any of you have, any questions, and as we do from the public. Thank you.
Very good presentation. Wow. I will tell you from personal experience that the answer seems to be a little closer to yes than no when somebody comes into the community development office. It's a matter of what needs to be done, not just, no, you can't do that. So I think you're making some good changes. I don't want to throw you too deep into this. The fire alarm changes, the master box, might you come back next meeting with some more detail on that? That apparently the master box system is being discontinued.
So that is a project that's ongoing. That will entail as well part of this rewrite of Chapter 34. So they're kind of two parallel things. The master box piece is something that the chief and the leadership team of the fire department are managing. But the rewrite, as we work collectively together, we'll kind of take the lead on that to try to make it streamlined.
Okay, thank you. Committee, questions? Anybody? Anybody? Laura?
I just have a quick comment. I had the opportunity to speak with you at the ward meeting, and hearing it again, it's really exciting to me to hear the customer-centric approach and meeting people where they are, removing barriers. I think that's a big part of making tools more accessible and allowing people to progress through the process of development, and it's really exciting to hear that, and so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any public questions or Councilor? Yes, public person. Name and address.
Jared Goodell, 39 Central Square, Keene. I have had the occasion of having building permits and different projects over the last 6 years, and never really was a fan of the building department or dealing with those folks. But I was a frequent complainer before. I felt the need when I saw this on the agenda to come out and say that Mr. Wood has really been a fantastic addition. I no longer get heartburn calling the fourth floor to ask questions. You're really a great addition. I was worried when I heard you were coming from Mass that, it wasn't going to be so good. But I have to tell you that I think Rick Wood is really a win for the city and is doing a good job. And I would echo what Councilor Greenwald said, that the answer seems to be more closer to yes than how can we stop you or put roadblocks up. So I would just commend Mr. Wood for the work that you've been doing. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else have any comments? I have one comment for the fire chief. Next year, inspection dinner, oyster casserole.
Oh, boy.
I can't believe that I had a conflict. I've been waiting for it for years. And for those of you who don't know, it's a historic, wonderful thing that went back 30 years when I first came on city council, and why I have continued to run. Maybe that's why. No, yeah. Yes, Elizabeth.
I just wanted to recognize our Fire Marshal, Rick Wood, for the good work that he has done over the last 6 months. It's been a heavy lift, and I think that he's made a lot of progress, and so I'm really excited about the future. I also want to recognize the fire chief and our employees on the 4th floor and our inspector at the fire department. This was not easy for them to make this change, and there was a lot of unknown while they were working through some of these changes. And I am proud of them because they have all stepped up. And so I just really wanted to acknowledge all of you, including the employees on the 4th floor and the Fire Inspection Division.
Thank you. And that would include the code enforcement staff also, of course. So anything further, committee, public?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I just want to thank the manager because I think too often we forget that it's the people. Not only is it the people we serve, but it's the people that serve. And it is important that the staff upstairs, as well as on 31 Vernon, know that they're appreciated. And I know that we are, and I very much appreciate the folks here in this room letting them know that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Jacob. Counselor.
Move to recommend that the presentation on code and fire inspections be accepted as informational.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Anything from the committee, public? Seeing none, all in favor? We are unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening. Second item on the agenda is a communication from Robert Hom regarding improvements in sidewalks and traffic patterns, Grove Street and Water Street. Yes, sir. Come present.
Good evening. Robert Hom, 89 Valley Street.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Do I have to do that? That's a point of information I didn't know, so it's really helpful to know that. Shall I say my name again? Is that right? Robert Hom, 89 Valley Street, Keene, New Hampshire. Thanks for receiving this letter. And this letter is about that intersection of Grove and Water Street. And the first thing I want to do is to give my thanks for the way in which the city responded so quickly to a need at that place, at that particular intersection. Putting up the four-way stop was a superb initial response. And then not waiting for this meeting to add those little markers that say four-way stop, all-way stop, and that makes a difference, I think. The letter that you have before you is a collaborative effort of the neighborhood. It happens to have my name on it, but there are a lot of folk. There was a conversation about how to make that intersection and the Water Street a more livable street. So what's helpful at this point? Would you like me to read the letter to you for the record, or what's?
Advise solutions, or?
Okay.
Go ahead. Anything you want.
We like what's been done thus far. We think there's more that can be done. So some solutions could be, and we're really concerned about that left turn lane. The left turn lane that is there at this point makes for a confusing intersection at times. And we believe that we really need to eliminate that left turn lane and to make provisions for a sidewalk on the Grove Street side of things. Secondly, with the elimination of that road and restriping of the road so the traffic squeezes appropriately and we don't have 3 lanes coming from Grove Street onto either Community Way. You know, it's hard to tell just what's happening there. Provision for the missing sidewalk. Somehow there's a challenge for pedestrians there as they come onto Community Way from Grove, because the Grove Street sidewalk at this point is on the east side of Grove Street, and the sidewalk on Community Way is on the west side of Community Way. We really like those pedestrian lights that were moved to the bike path. I'm really glad they're at the bike path too. I think that's really helpful. But we've witnessed times when folk are still busy drivers are still busy trying to negotiate the four-way stop, that they forget that there are pedestrians who are trying to cross also. And pedestrians go begging because now the drivers are watching other drivers, but not pedestrians. So some kind of pedestrian control, something that starts a light flashing. Maybe something that shows that there's an actual pedestrian crossing lane, different color perhaps. And those five are the main things that we would bring to you from the Neighborhood Association at this time. There may be other things that could be useful. We really appreciate what you're doing thus far. Thank you. Thank you so much. It really means a lot. So,
Questions? Thank you. City staff want to enter the conversation? If you like, you can stay there, or,
I can stay here, or should I go back?
no, stay where you are. You look good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucier, Public Works Director. Wait, before she yells at me? Okay, this is on.
It's on.
Thank you to Mr. Hom for bringing this forward. Yeah, in a lot of ways, I kind of agree with him. That intersection is a little confusing with the way it's configured. But before we get too far down the road, I thought it might be helpful to sort of review the history of this intersection a little bit and explain how we got to where we're at. So if you'll indulge me a little bit, the existing conditions there today really are an outgrowth of the 2006 Planning Board review of the Railroad Land Development Project that was brought forth by MEDC. In 2006, the MEDC's plan included, a number of different development projects on the railroad property. It included the two buildings that you see today at 51 Railroad Street, as well as the Marriott, those two sort of sister buildings, but others as well. One of them that was included in that development plan was a large indoor arena, athletic arena. That obviously hasn't come to pass, but instead we have the co-op today. So there's been just some changes to the original plan that was approved or considered in 2006. But as they do with any development plan, the planning board required a traffic study be prepared to see how that project would impact the surrounding road network. The traffic study found, based on the projected development and the expected land uses there, they were expecting a total of 490 vehicle trips in the peak hour. That's the hour, the busiest hour of the day, if you will, from 4 to 5 p.m. in this case. They were expecting 490 vehicle trips during the peak hour to be generated by that project. And we can look at the numbers today, and probably that number hasn't actually been realized, is the bottom line. But if we fast forward to 2012, so that's what happened in 2006, and the traffic study actually did recommend the turning lanes. So we fast forward to 2012, the city is preparing to do some infrastructure improvements to sort of support the railroad land development. That included reconstruction and all of the infrastructure on Eagle, Cypress, Grove, and also Railroad Street. And that project was completed back in 2012. As part of that, the city staff came to this committee and said, hey, this is the traffic study's recommendations, the expected traffic volumes when this project is fully built out. And if we're going to reconstruct the street at this time, we really think we should reconstruct it for that future condition rather than having to come back in 5 or 6 years and reconstruct the road again. And the committee and the council agreed with that recommendation. Now, the planning or the engineering division at that time brought forward a couple of different recommendations. There was a recommendation at Grove and Marlboro to add a turning lane, so now you have a left and a right turning lane. That ultimately is what got built there at Marlboro Street. There were two alternatives discussed for the Grove at Water Street intersection. One of those alternatives would have expanded the roadway towards the west, which was a vacant lot at the time. And one of the alternatives was to expand the roadway towards the east, which is the same residential building you see there today. And at the time, during that discussion, you can read in the meeting minutes, my predecessor, Court, discussed how expanding it towards the east would be easier because it's a vacant parcel. It wouldn't have the dramatic impact on the property, but it would make for awkward geometry. So, we understood at that time, but at the end of the day, the final decision was to not have that major impact on the residential property, which would have put the roadway within a few feet of that building, and instead have that greater impact on the vacant parcel. And subsequently, the city negotiated with the property owners and acquired that property, and was able to do the project as a result. So that's the sort of historical context, how we got to the geometry that we see today. Mr. Hom in his letter mentioned, I just want to kind of clarify one thing. You mentioned the sidewalk on the west side of Grove Street was sacrificed for the lane widening. And just to be clear, there never was a sidewalk on the west side of Grove in that section. At the time of the city's project in 2012, there was an asphalt sidewalk on the east side. That was then replaced with concrete and granite, but there was never a sidewalk on the west side. So it wasn't so much that we sacrificed an existing sidewalk, it's just we expanded it and didn't add a sidewalk. Okay? I will say, with respect to the specific proposals, the recommendations, number 1 and 2 in the letter really relate both to eliminating the left turn lane. As I mentioned, our most recent traffic counts, and we don't have detailed turning movement counts to know how many vehicles are turning in each of these lanes, but the most recent traffic counts, so gross traffic counts for that intersection, shows about 159 vehicles northbound on Grove Street during the peak hour. I think it's pretty fair to say if we did a more detailed traffic analysis, we would find that left turn lane is not warranted, right? I think that's a fair observation by Mr. Hom. Now that said, there is still undeveloped land within the railroad land development property, the area. Specifically, there are 2 parcels, vacant parcels, on the east side of Community Way. Both of those are currently owned by the Whitney brothers. They're 2 adjacent parcels. That parcel is sort of ripe for redevelopment or development, I suppose. And we don't know what that land use might be, what kind of traffic impacts that development could have in the future. So, I think the same concerns that were discussed in 2012 about designing and making sure we're planning for future growth still stand up today. We would really need to consider that carefully, what the future use of that property would potentially be. On I think I forget if it's number 1 or number 2, but one of the first 2 recommended adding the sidewalk on the west side of Grove from Water Street down to Willow. And we would definitely recommend, if the council wants to go forward with a sidewalk on that side of the street, it should definitely extend from Water to Willow, where there's existing sidewalks today. We don't want it to just, be a section of that, obviously. It's a total of about 570 feet. That's not something that's, budgeted or in our CIP yet, so we would have to move forward through that process. The number 3 on his list of recommendations, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's referring to, and I think there was maybe a typo in the letter, but I think you're referring to the sidewalk on the east side of Community Way, north of Water Street. Is that correct? That I would recommend against, frankly. The city actually only owns the first 270 feet of Community Way. After that, you enter onto land owned by MEDC or whoever the parent organization of that is now. So we own a strip of land there that has the roadway over it. It's not a laid-out public highway. And then after 270 feet, it becomes private property. So that, if we were to build a sidewalk there, it really would be a sidewalk to nowhere. So I wouldn't recommend that being a useful investment. On number 4, you suggested sort of the flashing beacons or something like this. You all have heard me talk, I'm sure, too much about the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It's sort of our Bible for traffic control systems, published by the Federal Highway. That guidebook was recently updated with allowances for the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, RRFBs, that we use at intersections, like the ones that we put at the bike trail there. Those guidelines specifically prohibit using them at stop-controlled intersections. So that's not something we could do. It would have to then go, if we wanted to do something with, a signal, it would have to go to either like a pedestrian hybrid beacon or a full traffic control signal, which, beyond being very costly, I can tell you, and I haven't done a formal engineering study on it yet, but I can tell you in all likelihood, we would not satisfy the warrants for a traffic control signal at that intersection. So I don't think that that's going to be something that Public Works is going to have to, be able to recommend. The number 5, different colored crosswalks. This is something that comes up as an idea periodically. People tend to love it. Again, the MUTCD specifically prohibits anything that's not standard coloring, anything that distracts from a vehicle operator knowing what the meaning of that pavement marking is. So again, that's not something that the Public Works would be able to recommend. And then the last one, Mr. Hom already recommended, item 6, that's been already taken care of. So in summary, if I was to wrap it up, my recommendation to the committee tonight is to wait a little while to see how the always stop controls are working. I think, and it's really too soon to know, but as I've been out there and kind of hiding in the bushes, observing traffic, people are actually stopping. The vast majority seem to have gotten used to the idea that that's a four-way stop now, and people are stopping, people are looking and driving it appropriately. I would suggest we wait and see if that resolves the majority of the problem before we do anything else. If you wanted to go forward with a more intensive traffic control, like a signal, we would have to do a traffic study for that. And again, I can tell you with a fairly high degree of certainty that it's not going to be warranted to put in a pedestrian hybrid beacon system or a full traffic signal. And then finally, if you really like the idea of adding a sidewalk to the west side, certainly not a terrible idea. It's something I think that would be great to have there, but that should really come through the CIP process. And I would just caution you that there's a lot of neighborhoods that have asked for new sidewalks, and we've been pretty consistently telling them, we've got 21 miles of sidewalks that are in substandard condition. We need to get those up to snuff before we build any new sidewalks. So with that, I'd be happy to take your questions or turn it over.
There was a lot more detail and information than I was expecting. Very, very good. Thank you. Committee, questions? Counselor.
I actually had a quick question for Don.
So close.
You had said that you were kind of suggesting a wait and see approach, and I was wondering if you have a specific time frame that is best practice, that this is good to revisit after a year or 6 months, or is there?
So, like, if we're to look at, for example, the MUTCD has traffic warrants for always stops and signalized intersections. They look at the number of crashes over 1, 3, 5-year periods. So I would suggest, waiting a year to see what happens, how it's working, getting a report back from the PD about any issues that they're finding, and then sort of taking the next step at that point.
Yes. Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your comments and suggestions. I definitely would be leaning towards more 1 or 2 for the possible solutions. Particularly, I just don't love the idea of having the sidewalk on 2 different sides of the street. And I think just with our philosophy of continued sidewalks and not like having sidewalks lead to nowhere, it just makes sense that there be a connecting path there. But I'm all in favor of it going through the appropriate process of the CIP. And as you said, we would be doing a disservice if we did not do that and ignored the requests of and the needs of the other neighborhoods that have sidewalks that are in dire need of repair. So, however, I don't like just accepting it as informational. I do want us to look at this more yeah, so I'll be making a motion to refer it to city staff, I think, in addition to taking it as informational, but.
Thank you. Yep, Counselor.
Yeah, I agree with what the council said as far as, not just accepting it as informational, but let staff take a look at it. Not that I've been around for a while, but I was on both committees in 2006 and 2012. So, and I actually remember going through the process of both of these studies. And yeah, Public Works Director jotted my memory of that was originally going to be a sports complex there, and we were that close to having to be a sports complex. But it shows how things change. And then in 2012, we looked at it again. At one point, there was going to be an east side bypass. And it just shows, what I'm just saying is, every time we do a study, you think you've come up with something, but things have a tendency to evolve and change. But I think the points they made are valid. I think we have listened because we have a 4-way stop sign there now, so we are progressing. I do agree. I'm not so sure we need that left-hand turn lane there. I wouldn't object at all to that being eliminated. But once again, having been on 2 previous studies in 2006 and 2012, I don't want to just jump on something and then have to go back and rescind it. So I would agree that we send it to staff to take a look at a little bit more in depth and not bury this, but actually get back and respond to this, maybe not next month, or maybe the month after, or after Public Works has had a chance to do a traffic study on that intersection.
Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple different things. I first of all want to say that I agree with Councilor Workman around the not wanting to just accept this as informational and be done with it and put it in a circular file somewhere. I really appreciate, this is an intersection in my ward, and I appreciate the involvement of the community in that area to bring these issues forward and not just come and say here's an issue, but actually offer some solutions for us to talk through. I think that's really important, and I really appreciate that. I also am open to further discussion at some point about this left turn lane. I'm like thinking, and I have it up here, that's why I'm looking down here, because I have the intersection up on Google Maps, and I'm thinking of my experience as a pedestrian and a driver in that area, and it does create a little bit of a weird misalignment at that intersection. I will also say that even though I was one of the votes against installing the 4-way stop at the time, I heard from a constituent recently, resident of Grove Street, who thinks that it actually is working. And I have actually been surprised pleasantly at how it does seem like people have really quickly picked up on it being a 4-way stop, which was something that I was not sure was going to happen. So not quite ready to admit I was wrong yet, but halfway there. So I would support a motion to refer this to city staff so that we can have some additional conversation about an intersection that folks in that community have identified as problematic in a couple different ways.
Thank you. Any public thoughts or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Vicki Morton, 275 Water Street.
Into the mic.
It's not close enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree that the 4-way stop has worked. I've been at that intersection multiple times and noticed how savvy drivers have gotten when they figure out when it's their turn, they kind of slide through the stop signs, that it isn't stop and go, it's, okay, it's my turn. And they just ease on through. So it isn't a stop and then go. It is which is it going to be my turn next? The real concern that I have about that intersection is with the safety of pedestrians. We have a lot of folks who are at 122 Water Street, and they're on bikes or their scooters as means of getting around. Traffic does not stop for pedestrians. A lot of those folks are not using the bike lanes in order to go through that intersection. And there are, I think, I could be really wrong, but I believe that there are more school kids that are using that intersection. And so anybody that's coming from the west side of Grove Street or Community Ave have to cross the street in order to get to the east side walkway on Grove Street to walk to school. So I still think, I'm glad you're considering a study, because I think there are still issues with that intersection in the gliding through and the not stopping for pedestrians or folks on their scooters or the bikes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Committee? Thank you. Thank you for bringing this to us, and by referring it to staff, that means that there will be more. It's
Thank
not
you very
just
much.
Gone. Yes, ma'am.
I move to recommend the communication be referred to city staff.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Committee? Public? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. And now for what I would call the main event of the evening. This is regarding Route 9 Old Sullivan Road intersection. And we have, I think, the New Hampshire DOT with us, as well as our Director of Public Works.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to call up the new city engineer, but I'd like to sort of take this opportunity to formally introduce our new city engineer to the committee, the council. Brian Ruoff is joining us on September 16th, and I want to say that we kind of threw him into the meat grinder. He joined us on the 16th, and on the 23rd, I took off on vacation. So it was sort of like, here's the matzo ball, have fun with it. But I got to tell you, I came back, and he had taken the bull by the horns and is really just fitting right into the team. So I think you'll be pretty happy with what he's done. I also want to point out Lieutenant Chidester is here with us tonight. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. This has been really a collaborative effort between the engineering division and the folks at KPD. We also have Frank Lindenbringer from New Hampshire DOT District 4. Frank is the Assistant District Engineer with District 4, but he's also a sitting member of our Roadway Safety Action Planning Committee, and has been helping us out over the last 6 or 8 months as we work through that safety plan. So I think you'll like to hear from his perspective as well. And with that, I'll shut up.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. For the record, Brian Roth, City Engineer. I'm here tonight to talk about the Sullivan Road at New Hampshire Route 9 intersection. I put together a slideshow that I'm going to go through as part of this. Essentially to discuss the history at this intersection, the crash history, which Detective Chidester is here for, the constraints and ownership of the road, both Route 9 and Sullivan Road, and provide a summary of the public feedback that's been received to date for the committee. So with that, I'll get into it. So why are we here? The engineering division responds to serious traffic incidents and assist, as Don said, the Keene Police Department in performing accident surveys. This is for accidents, major accidents that involve either a loss of life, major injury, or where a crime has been committed or suspected to be committed. As part of the review of this intersection, the city's consultant engineer has reviewed as part of the Safe Streets for All program this intersection and provided recommendations associated with that. So we were looking at this before the most recent accident, and as a result of the most recent accident, we're here soliciting public feedback and then presenting that today for the committee. Also, what we've done today is the detective has compiled the crash report data. Most specifically, the last 18 months, there's been 4 major incidents that would fit the criteria of the serious traffic incidents in the last 18 months, and there's, I believe, 9 in the last 12 years. But we'll get to the specifics of that in more detail coming up. In response to this, we've solicited public feedback and outreach in the form of letters to abutters for the neighboring areas of Keene. Because of how much response we received, we ended up extending that to a public meeting, which was scheduled on the 10th. As part of this presentation tonight, I'll present the summary of recommendations and issues that people saw as part of safety concerns with this intersection. And to date, we've also discussed with DOT essentially what's feasible, and they're here today to talk about that as well. So just to situate everyone, the intersection overhead view, Route 9, Sullivan Road intersection. Sullivan Road intersects both on the southerly side and northerly side of Route 9. The eastbound lane on Route 9 is a single lane at the intersection, while the the westbound, while the westbound, it starts the passing lane at the same location, which causes difficulties with the fact that people are looking to take a left-hand turn onto Sullivan Road, while cars are also looking to speed up to pass at the same location. So this is a map, overhead map, which demonstrates essentially where the Route 9 right-of-way extends to. So even though Sullivan Road is a city-owned road, the state right-of-way extends roughly 60 feet, roughly on either side of that existing intersection. So here's a view eastbound on Route 9 at Sullivan Road to give some perspective. It really describes the line of sight in the opposite direction better than the eastbound direction. And this is the opposite direction in that view with traffic coming down the hill for westbound traffic, just to orientate everyone. And here's the line of sight on the southerly side on Sullivan Road. This is the Keene side of the road. This is the side that potentially we would look to close, would have the least impact on traffic in this area, potentially, as a potential immediate solution. So what feedback did we receive from the public? The crash history reports give us a very good indication of what occurred as part of accidents and incidents, but what we don't see in that is essentially the near misses at this intersections. What allowances are people making to safely turn on and off of this road and in this intersection, and what are they observing? What are they doing to try and keep themselves safe at this intersection? So a lot of people indicated in either their email responses or the public meeting, they slow down on Route 9 to turn onto Sullivan Road in either direction, for both right and left-hand turns. Traffic traveling in Route 9 often lets the traffic pass to be able to, prior to making a turn onto Sullivan Road. There's limited line of sight has been observed by residents on Route 9 from Sullivan Road, look for vehicles either looking to cross Route 9 or turn on to Route 9. And then because of the dual lanes, the passing lanes, a lot of cars speed up at the passing lane while other cars are slowing down to make a turn, which creates a dangerous condition, obviously, a unique and dangerous condition. As other people noted that there's limited visibility on Sullivan Road from Route 9 at nighttime. You can't really see Sullivan Road as you're approaching it on Route 9. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Detective Chidester, and he's going to provide a summary of the accidents. He's the best authority on that for this intersection.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here tonight. So, as Brian has shared, there is a history of serious collisions at this intersection. Using Keene Police Department records, I've gone back over the past 5 years and can detail for you the traffic collisions that have occurred at this intersection during that period in time. For your background, I'm a lieutenant with the Keene Police Department. I am the team commander of the Keene Police Department Collision Analysis Team. We respond to all serious motor vehicle collisions with either serious bodily injury or fatality that occur in the city of Keene. So we're going to go back in time to the first collision that occurred here in that 5-year window, which was in 2019. I'll give a brief overview of each of the collisions, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. As we progress through some of the later collisions, I have some visual graphics to help illustrate certain things. So going back to 2019, this was a collision involving 2 motor vehicles. The first driver was on the northern side of Sullivan Road, attempting to cross Route 9 to the southern side of Sullivan Road. The other driver was westbound Route 9 going up the hill. The first driver crossed the road in front of that oncoming westbound vehicle. Westbound vehicle struck the crossing car, and there was serious bodily injury in the crossing vehicle. Moving ahead now into 2023, and you'll note that we have a gap from 2019 to 2023. There was no serious collisions in our data for this intersection. Alarmingly, these serious collisions appear to be picking up in frequency for this section of the roadway. 2023, this is a 3-vehicle collision. In this particular case, we have a driver that is attempting to cross from the northern side of Sullivan Road, again, towards the southern side of Sullivan Road. In doing so, they strike a vehicle that is traveling westbound, so up the hill on Route 9. That vehicle is then pushed into the eastbound lane where it is struck by a Penske box truck that is coming down the hill. You see the one of the scene photos from this collision here. The black car is the vehicle that was struck. The driver of the black car suffered serious bodily injury as a result of this collision. She probably will never regain full use of her arm from this crash, and she was not obviously able to be here tonight, but she has expressed repeatedly how interested she is in seeing this intersection modified to try to prevent such crashes in the future. Obviously, this crash also involves a commercial motor vehicle. In the field of collision analysis and reconstruction, whenever you have more than 2 vehicles involved, the degree of severity of that crash usually increases. And whenever you have a commercial motor vehicle involved, the chances of serious bodily injury or death also increase. Moving ahead now into 2024, this is another 3-vehicle collision. In this particular case, can you go to the next? So, yep, next one from that.
Wow.
One more.
I don't think I have it.
Okay.
No,
So there may
sorry.
not be a graphic for this one. This is another
Apologize.
3-vehicle collision. In this particular case, we have a vehicle that is stopped and it's waiting to turn left onto Sullivan Road to go towards the north. The second vehicle involved is coming down the hill, so they're traveling eastbound Route 9. They fail to observe the vehicle stopped in the line ahead, waiting to take that left-hand turn. They impact the rear of that stopped vehicle and push it into the westbound lane, which strikes a third vehicle. That third vehicle is then forced into the guardrail on the northern side of the road. All vehicles in this collision had serious bodily injury of 1 or more of the occupants. There are no fatalities in this collision. Again, in 2024, we now move into the 4th collision that has occurred at this intersection. This is, again, a 3-vehicle collision. This one has a graphic which I'll show you here in a moment. For this one, there's a vehicle that is stopped. That vehicle is in the westbound lane for Route 9. They want to turn left onto Sullivan Road going to the south. So they are stopped in what would essentially be perceived as a passing lane for westbound traffic on Route 9. They are struck from behind by another westbound vehicle that pushes them into the eastbound lane where they're then subsequently struck by a tractor-trailer truck that's coming down the hill. We have a dash cam video from that tractor-trailer, which I'll play for you in a minute. He is unloaded at this time, and so he is able to bring his vehicle to a decelerated stop at a remarkably short distance. And in my opinion, that is the only reason why this was not either a serious collision or potentially a fatality. Can you play that? So I think that speaks for itself. The final collision occurred also in 2024. This was a two-vehicle collision. We have a motorcycle that is traveling eastbound on Route 9, so they're coming down the hill. We have a vehicle that is traveling westbound that is attempting to turn onto Sutherland Road to the south. It turns in front of the oncoming motorcycle. That motorcycle impacts the rear of the turning vehicle. The rider of the motorcycle is ejected and suffers serious bodily injury as a result of this collision. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have pertaining to the collision history in this intersection, but clearly there is a history of serious collisions here, and the incidence of those collisions seems to be increasing as we have time progressing forward.
And as you said, we have no record of the near misses and.
Correct.
Committee? Okay, onward.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. So we got very good feedback from the public, which I'll be summarizing in the next 4 slides. A lot of good recommendations. DOT can speak to a lot of them because a lot of them are suggested for in DOT's right away, and they'll talk to the logistics on them and whether or not that makes sense, and basically what they've been able to review to date as part of that. So as part of the public outreach, we received roughly 20 emails. I received probably 3 phone calls, even had one person walk in and draw me a map of what they thought would be the best solution. So really good feedback from everyone. And I think even 2 or 3 people called into the radio station with suggestions. So a lot of people had a lot of good input for this. And as part of the public meeting, I think we had close to 50 people, I want to say. So a lot of good impact, a lot of good input from the public. So with that, I'll summarize basically the recommendations from the public and what they thought were potential corrective actions for this intersection. The most common was installing a flashing yellow light on Route 9 in either for traffic traveling in either direction. Second most frequently submitted, reducing the posted speed on Route 9 approaching this intersection. Raise the grade of Sullivan Road at Route 9 so there's better sight distance along Route 9. Install rumble strips in Route 9 approaching the intersection, similar to what's done in Peterborough at the Shaw's roundabout. Restripe the westbound lane for left turn only, so that cars aren't trying to pass and turn in that lane. Install no passing signs on New Hampshire Route 9 or not safe to pass signs on Route 9 so people understand not to pass in that area. Install lights and light poles on Sullivan Road to provide better illumination to be able to see Sullivan Road at night. Reconfigure and reconstruct the intersection. Widen Route 9 prior to the intersection to provide a dedicated passing lane. Replace the intersection with a roundabout. It's a little extreme solution, but we were open to receiving everything, so that was one that we received a couple of times. And build an overpass for Route 9 to go over Sullivan Road. And then install dangerous intersection ahead signs on Route 9 prior to Sullivan Road. Install speed cameras on Route 9, provide additional police patrols, clear the vegetation along Route 9 to provide additional sight distance for cars pulling out of Sullivan Road, prohibit left-hand turns onto and off of Route 9, and replace the guardrail on New Hampshire Route 9 with wire guardrail to improve the sight distance. A lot of people at the public meeting mentioned that they have difficulty seeing through the guardrail for the oncoming traffic on Route 9. So these recommendations that were received specifically can be implemented by the City of Keene because they involve the city's right-of-way of Sullivan Road. One that was received was close Sullivan Road. A second that was similar but a little bit different, close Sullivan Road but provide gated access for emergency vehicles, so that isn't lost. Just to keep us on our toes, keep Sullivan Road open. And then submit detail officer reports to traffic software indicating that there's speed checks at that location. I thought that was a creative alternative, but not necessarily a fail-safe solution. So this map essentially shows the areas that for, let's call it Sullivan Road south of Route 9 that are serviced by the road. Essentially, Concord Road intersects, but it continues along to Route 9, so there's still another point of access at that point. Moore Hill Farm Road, Concord Road, Nims Road, and a portion of Jordan Road all are serviced by Sullivan Road for access to Route 9. For traffic traveling in the eastbound direction on Route 9, a closure would add roughly a 4-mile detour for Keene residents for closing the, let's call it, Sullivan Road South at this intersection for a point of reference. From the Sullivan Road north, fewer Keene properties, but there's not a dedicated route to avoid or to replace the Sullivan Road. So it's not, in our opinion, from the preliminary review of this, it's not a viable means of closing this, especially based on the feedback we received at public meeting. So with that, we've coordinated initially and discussed with DOT. At this point, I invite Frank Lindenberger up here if it's okay with the committee. He's the Assistant District Engineer for New Hampshire DOT and could speak to some of the recommendations that have been provided for Route 9.
Thank you. You want to
Talk here, sit there.
Do you want, you could sit, stand, and if you want to bring another chair over.
Whatever you're comfortable
Whatever you
with,
like.
Amanda will sit back there.
Can come up if there's
Okay, turn your microphone on.
He turned it on for me, so I don't
All
have.
right.
Frank Lindenbringer, New Hampshire DOT. I'll give you my 19 Base Hill Road if you need that. Also, we have with us Amanda Jo Zadecki? Zateka, sorry, who's with the safety group and Concord. She's my backup. I don't know if you want to go back to your list and go through the list, or
Sure. It's your show, whatever works for you.
That's probably the
That probably makes
easiest.
sense.
I'll start by a couple comments. One, while it is DOT right-of-way, from DOT's in general perspective, a street road is the same as a driveway, so the owner of the driveway can propose improvements through a driveway permit, and we can review and issue a permit, and the owner can make those modifications. So the city is more than willing, or more than able to put forward a proposal, and we'll review and see if we can approve. So I'll put that out to begin with. And then these actually works pretty well, because I will say that a lot of these, particularly in this one, are ones that DOT is going to discourage, primarily because traffic studies and whatnot have proven that most of these are ineffective. Flashing yellow lights tend to be ignored shortly after being installed. I will tell you that we looked at two options, the normal flashing beacon. We're also exploring a intersection warning beacon. If you know, there's one installed in Chesterfield at the intersection of 63 and 9. There's also one in Peterborough at 101 and 123. And I can tell you that so far the feedback we have is really not particularly supportive of them, and they don't really seem to be beneficial. So it's unlikely that we're going to expand those at this point. Somewhat the same with the posted speed. The speed of travel tends to be what people are comfortable traveling on the road, less so what the sign says. And if you look at the average travel speed, I believe that I saw one that said trucks are running about 54 and a half, and vehicles are running at about 57, which means that's pretty much the speed traffic is going to travel. Should say average, there's not people going much faster than that, but that's the kind of standard speed. So just changing the speed limit is unlikely to affect the speed of travel at the location. I'll skip over that one. Rumble strips in New Hampshire 9. Again, I was told basically this would be a new use that's used nowhere else in the state. They are in Peterborough, but that's a warning as you come into the roundabout, warning people that they're going to have to slow down to go through the roundabout. This is not an actual intersection where you would necessarily have to slow down, so installing them would be a new use that would be unusual to people and perhaps confuse them because it's not something that there's a standard usage. I'll skip that one. The no passing signs on New Hampshire 9. I guess we'll say we're a little confused about because it's a truck passing lane, so we're not quite sure how you can put a no passing on a truck passing lane. As the point of the truck passing lane is to pass, so we're it's kind of in conflict. Before we move on, I'll just hit the other two. Raising the grade, I guess would say is an option. Again, that would be more of on the city side of things. I'm sure they will tell you, if you well know, it's kind of hard to see from the overhead, but there are definitely some vertical concerns out there because Route 9 is significantly higher than basically the rest of Sullivan Road. It really comes up there. So any modifications to bring that up to grade are going to carry back and have a larger implication. And then I'll go with the restripe. I would say that's probably the one thing that we've looked at and said, we've evaluated there is space in which to put in left turn lanes. If we wanted to remove the truck lane, restripe it, the space is there. That is something that could be done. I would say that our feedback is we would not want to do that until we study that some more, do an evaluation of turn. It's very similar to what you just talked about with the other intersection in Keene, that we want to look at, is the turn lane warranted? Because it doesn't serve any purpose to put in turn lanes where they're not warranted, and to make sure that there's not some other traffic issues going on there that we're going to make worse by putting in turn lanes. But that would be one that we would be willing to consider with a little more study, probably. So that's that page. Lights and light poles, I will go back to, that would actually be a city issue because we don't illuminate intersections with town or city roads on state highways. I ended up removing everything in like 2012. So if a city would like lights there, that would be the city's evaluation. I would also probably confirm, but I feel like most of those crashes that I saw were daytime crashes.
100% daytime crashes.
So I'm not sure that lights are really the issue, at least in those particular cases. Reconfigure, widen, roundabout, overpass. Essentially, those are all 10-year project type of projects. They're larger building projects that are going to have to be submitted to DOT to go through the 10-year plan process to get them through. I will add, I talked to the staff, but I point out, Keene currently has 2 other intersections under road safety audits that we're looking at to do improvements. This would be a third, so at some point, Keene's going to need to prioritize what order and which ones we're looking at, because we can't do them all. So when they started putting them into the plan, there's going to have to be a prioritization of which ones we want to address first. So that's just I think for the city, sorry. You're the only city I have, so I keep getting confused. So for the city to consider is that. And the same thing with dangerous intersection ahead signs. Basically, I was told, unless we have a plan for what we're going to do, that would be highly discouraged. Those would be a temporary thing, but in preparation of an immediate solution, not as a long-term solution. So those would be discouraged. And then speed cameras, I guess we'll go with, if you're talking about actual cameras, those are not allowed on New Hampshire roads, so those would be illegal. If you're talking about speed feedback signs, those could be, again, those would be something the city could apply to install. And we do maintenance agreements with towns and cities to maintain speed feedback signs on the locations. Again, police patrols would be police, not us. Vegetation, I will tell you, basically, we have one over-the-rail mower that goes around Keene and probably hits once, maybe twice a year. I would say the city of Keene is more than, they can go mow it again if they'd like to. Thought you'd like that one. Hey, no problem. I was say, again, we treat it similar to a driveway. We tell you the site distance of a drive is the responsibility of the owner of the driveway. So we would pass that, if the additional clearing is needed, we'd pass that back to the city. Prohibit left turns on the route. That one, I would say, back to that one we'd possibly consider. There was concern that if we prohibit left turns, that we're gonna get a bunch of people that are gonna turn right out and then pull a UE on 9 further down, which is not a safer solution than just having them cross the road. And then replacing the guardrail with, I will start by saying, as far as I'm aware, we've never gone from W-beam back to cable guardrail. I'd be unlikely that we would consider that. I looked at Street View and it was beam guardrail in 2009. So when I've heard several people say that it was recently switched, their definition of recent is a little bit different than mine, because it's been at least 15 years that it's been W-beam. I did not look to see if we did a project to upgrade it, but like I said, as far as I know, the pictures show that it existed in 2009. And is there more? I think there's one.
I think
Those are mostly
city
yours,
controlled.
city controlled.
Yeah.
And go with we have generally have no opinion on if the city would like to close the road. If they do, we don't oppose or support that, so that's up to you.
Can you speak more to the 10-year plan process? You touched on that a little bit. But.
Don might be able to speak to it better than I can. Oh, you're going to do that?
Yeah, if I may.
Yeah, please do.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Frank mentioned the 2 road safety audits. So the city and the DOT will periodically solicit towns to, ask for where they would like to see a road safety audit done. We've previously submitted 2 intersections to be studied. One is the Route 12 Wyman Road Corporate Drive intersection. And that was submitted, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. The other one, more recently, we submitted the intersection of Wickham's Mill with Route 9, west of town. Both of those are still sort of in the queue, and we don't know when those might occur, but those are the 2 RSAs that Frank mentioned. In terms of the 10-year plan, this is the DOT process by which we can request funding for some of the bigger projects. So, for example, the Lower Winchester Street project went through the 10-year plan program. Route 101 improvements is a 10-year plan project that's moving forward. So, as the name implies, these are sort of long-term planning projects for the bigger infrastructure. That process begins with submitting a project nomination to the Southwest Regional Planning Commission. The local Transportation Advisory Committee will look at those, rank those, and decide on the projects to move forward in the process. It's basically a 1-year process to go through all of the review. DOT ultimately will rank and stack those and develop their 10-year plan for improvements of the infrastructure, so.
Thank you.
As I said, were you
No,
gonna-
please.
As I said, Don could probably explain that better. And I was going to throw out, for 10-year plan, I would say that you're probably looking at 5 to 10 years on best case for a project to get there, because I'm pretty sure we just finished the process, so the current 10 years out, it's a 2-year cycle on that plan, so it would be 2 years before the next plan would be generated, and then it would be ranked in with all the other projects that are already in the plan. Not to say it wouldn't move up higher in the plan. We've had, as some of people know, we've probably had, I don't know if we've had Keene projects, but I know there've been projects that have been in the 10-year plan for 30 to 40 years. So it definitely could bump something else down the line, but it gets ranked amongst all the other projects that are already sitting in that plan. So I would say that, like, again, through that process, it's probably a 5 to 10 year best case scenario.
You done?
Sure.
Okay. Seem like a really nice guy. So, don't take my attitude as personal. But, boy, I just heard 12 ways of saying no to everything that came up. And I guess I'm old enough, or too old, to be all that patient. I want some solutions now. And, this sounds like maybe political, wah, wah, wah. But I am really, really hopeful that you, with city staff, can come up with some, yes, we can do this before the snow flies, before somebody else gets into an accident. It's a bad intersection. We all know it. Look at the guardrail that's crumpled on, well, I guess that's the Keene side of Sullivan Road. Obviously, there are other non-reported accidents that have gone on, or maybe they're reported, but not of the magnitude that people were injured. There has to be solutions. We had 50 people in this room coming up with great ideas, and I don't think most of them were over the moon. Okay, an underpass, a roundabout, I grant you, that's a 10-year that'll turn into a 30-year project. There has to be solutions that we can do, and I'm just hoping that you, as the local tie and our Public Works Director, can pull something together, at least get it started. And if it's not the best solution to have flashing lights or putting up street lights, and I'll get on the city manager to, let's get some street lights out there if that's what's going to make this safer. We have to do something. And, maybe I'm really getting a little too into this because it is my ward. It is my neighbors that are in this intersection. I use it every day, and I see just how horrible this is. You really have to be aware. To hear people from Sullivan saying that they kind of call each other, and Nims Road calling each other, is it safe to go out today? What the heck? And I know we have other intersections that are in the chute that need improvement. Right now, I'm focused on one, and that one. And I really hope our professional staff can pull this together. So, all right, I vented. Yes, your turn.
I'm going to echo a lot what Councilor Greenwald said. I mean, the last thing we want to do is have it go on the state's 10-year plan, because we know on this side of the state that means 20 years or never. I'm almost tempted to say, go back and tell them it's Nashua or Manchester, we'll probably get approval in a week. We're kind of the lost side of the state over here. We've just shown that, especially just this year, 3 of those accidents happened this year. So obviously we have a serious intersection. And I do echo that. We just can't hear no, 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 no. We have to hear something, at least a maybe. I'm looking at all the lists here, and as Councilor Greenwald said, what can we do before the snow flies? And you mentioned, well, rumble strips, those would be a new use. Good. Go to the state, say, we get a new use for you. Because at one point, when we did the roundabout down there where Applebee's is, the state said, we don't do roundabouts. Well, you do now, but it was a new idea at one time. And guess what? It works, and they're popping them everywhere now because they work. The rumble strips in Peterborough work, and yeah, you know what? It does startle people. Well, that's what the hell they're supposed to do. And not only do the rumble strips work, but now where they groove the center lines in the breakdown lanes, yeah, you drift a little bit, it hits, it wakes you up, it does the job, and it's inexpensive as far as highway projects go. So at the very least, if you can go back to your supervisors, and we talk about something before the snow flies, they could do the rumble strips and groove those lanes easily and relatively inexpensively, based on what other